Hey everybody, Jim Ventura here. Time for my September-October live column read. And, it was kind of like a very hot summer here in Phoenix, as it was in many places in the country. And I didn't write a new column, but just kind of on an instinct, I went back and looked to run an older column. And I found something from 2016. So as I read this column, aloud here, you're going to hear a reference to 2016 because it was when it was originally written. But my point here, why I reran this column, and you'll probably, if you follow through on the read, you'll understand why at multiple levels, is it really wasn't that dissimilar to kind of what's going on now as we're heading into an election scene and kind of just where we're at in general. So I thought very interesting, rerun this column. And in terms of editing, I basically had to do almost nothing, because it was already edited and there was so little to change, and I think that is not really the good news accordingly. So let's kind of dive in. And the column piece is called Closer to the Heart. All right, so one of my fondest memories of my early 20s was attending many different rock concerts. I saw amazing groups like Yes, Fleetwood Mac, Pink Floyd, the Moody Blues, Fix, and so many other notable bands. My friends and I would bring our concert paraphernalia and just hang out and listen to incredible live music with other fans. I have been blessed to have wonderful memories of many, many good times associated with music. One of my favorite bands was Rush. To this day, they're still making great music, although it has been about 28 years since I attended my last Rush concert. During every concert, they inevitably sang one of their most profound and touching songs called Closer to the Heart. It's always been the same pattern in every concert. When the first few chords of the song began, everyone would stand up and quietly light their lighters and raise them in the air, each individual flame creating a sea of light. It may sound silly if you've never experienced something like this, but it was always a powerful event, and the emotional wave that lit up the room in a really touching way was amazing. There were no arguments or disagreements about what the song meant. Everyone there was connected, each in their own way, and feeling the same universal hope of building a new reality that was closer to the heart. 2016 is come and gone, and a few of us would argue that it was an extremely difficult year. I actually personally had a fairly good year, but I helped a lot of people who were experiencing some really difficult tests that challenged them. The tragic news stories, losses of major celebrities, artists, and musicians were far too frequent. The terrorist activities here in America and abroad were brutal. There's a period in the early summer where there seemed to be weekly stories that were incomprehensible. One of my friends at the gym, who's just a few years older than me, wisely remarked that he felt bad for young people today because they were becoming used to this stuff. They would never know a time when tragedies and terrorist attacks weren't a normal thing. The elections were relentlessly mudslinging. Fake news stories were everywhere. Attacks on men and women of color and the slaying of police officers was some of the darkest stuff I've ever seen so far in my lifetime. Not only were the candidates at times smearing each other, but the memes I saw on Facebook from fans on either side were at times incredibly uncomfortable to look at. I never unfriended anyone, but I did have to temporarily mute a few people who were posting things that were quite ugly. It's one thing to disagree and express a point of view, and another to viciously attack people who disagree. The election was fascinating to follow. It was unlike anything we've ever seen before. It was unfortunate, uncomfortable to watch, and hard to turn completely away from at the same time. I often heard during the year that a huge percent of Americans feel that things are going in the wrong direction. There might be some truth in this belief. Stagnant wages, corrupt politicians, and the shrinking of the middle class are among a host of difficult areas that are hard to deny. Yet we sometimes seem to overlook how far we've come in the last 3 decades when it comes to human rights. When I was a young man, interracial dating was often extremely frowned upon. Mixed couples, it almost seems silly saying those words now, were frequently taunted, disowned, and treated horribly. Women had all kinds of nonsense to deal with, a list too long to list here. Racial and sexual religious bias were still at levels that young people today could not comprehend. Now more people can comfortably admit that they are spiritual without being labeled New Age nut jobs. While Christianity in its many forms is still practiced by far by the largest percentage of Americans, other religious affiliations are able to be more comfortable expressing themselves, including atheists and agnostics, without scorn. Gay and lesbian couples no longer have to hide in the closet. They legally marry, have children, and live far more comfortably in comparison to even a decade ago. We recycle things, we're becoming more aware of eating healthier, having amazing technological breakthroughs that make a lot of aspects of our lives far easier. Advances in Western medicine and healthcare have moved forward. Prosthetics have given people mobility. Alternative medicine and healing have become actual options for people. Listen, inequity still exists. We're far from where we ideally should be. But we've taken great strides forward. To not acknowledge this notable progress as purposeful blindness. Well, with all these amazing changes in forward movement over the years, want us to wonder, why are we currently experiencing such an obvious darker backlash in human rights? Well, all kinds of people have been able to come out of the closet and be themselves. We also see a lot more negative belief in troll-like commentaries as well. A rise in the alt-right movement, kind of a modern name for white supremacist groups, and some equally extremist groups to the very far left as well, are sadly on the rise. The challenging of women's rights again, arguments over the use of the right bathroom, and name-calling of epic proportions are hard to comprehend. I've seen people I call friends on Facebook post some surprisingly ugly things. One side causing liberals things like libtards, the other side calling anyone who disagrees racists and hillbillies. Comments and articles and posts are some of the meanest, ugliest things I've ever seen. Hate crimes toward Jewish people, Muslims, immigrants, and transgender people are on the rise. We seem to be moving backwards and almost getting uglier in some respects. The beautiful progressive hope of people coming together and moving closer to the heart truly seems to be a pipe dream. I was very, very young in the early to mid-70s, but just old enough to remember the sharp division between Republicans and Democrats. The country was very divided. The contrast of the hippie peace and love movement against an extremely conservative movement were often an angry battle over who was right. It felt somewhat similar pattern to that time again. I suspect we will see very similar themes played out again. One of the most common of the 7 fears or chief negative features in human beings is stubbornness or fear of change. Its positive expression is determination. Its negative expression is obstinacy. A lot of people with stubbornness are really yelling loudly at this time. Many people are getting meaner. Fear is increasing on both sides, the left and the right. It can be extremely difficult to maneuver comfortably during these cycles. It has felt very uncomfortable energetically for most of 2016. May not be an easy thing to do, but seeing the larger picture can be of value. The discomfort may actually be part of the healing process. Sometimes forward movement in society may include a temporary move backwards before we take great strides forward again. The current volatile energy is actually a response to how far we've moved, how far our movement has become. The confusion and fear of changing and evolving society has scared many people and triggered some fighting back. The movement away from a focus of the heart is noticeable in many other ways. I see so many people in unhappy marriages, clinging to jobs that they don't find rewarding, but pay the bills. Large numbers of people struggling with commitments to family that they don't find fulfilling or truly rewarding. Many people use alcohol, antidepressants, and a wide range of drugs to help block the pain of lack of joy in their lives. It's no surprise that we have an epidemic of drug addiction in many states. Potentially life-destroying abuses of pharmaceutical drugs, heroin and meth are always coping mechanisms with lives that are unfulfilling and not heart-centered. Self-destruction and other of the 7 fears is actually a fear of loss of control. A few weeks ago, a Middle Eastern deli bakery was the target of vandalism here in Phoenix. Rocks were thrown through the store window fronts and graffiti saying hateful things, desecrating the building. This is a family-run business that has been in the valley for over 40 years. A beautiful coming together of people created a GoFundMe page on Facebook to help with the repairs. Quite a bit of money was raised. And now even more people are patronizing the deli than ever. People came together to do the right thing, perhaps figuratively raising their lighters high in the air. They acted from a place that was closer to the heart. This is one of the many current examples of good that can arise from the ugliness. We will thankfully see more of this in the coming years. Good things are peeking through, but it's likely to be a rocky road ahead. Maybe if more people stop identifying with only being a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, etc., and see themselves as part of the human race, we could create a change in the focus. The truth is, clinging to only left or right positions is myopic. The majority of us have areas where we're somewhat liberal and somewhat conservative. It also suggests a lack of self-awareness to not recognize and honor that there are other people who may not feel or believe, who may feel or believe differently than us. Moving forward to a heart-centered place needs to be more than just a political issue. Yes, sometimes we need to stand up against oppression and challenge what is ugly in this world. This is one significant way we contribute to changing the world for the better. Still, it's important for us to be decent and kind in our day-to-day lives, to become more heart-centered and release more of our bias. The most powerful element of societal transformation and growth are small, everyday, positive, thoughtful deeds of ordinary people. And that will contribute to building a new reality that is closer to the heart. All right, so there was my column read, and you can see why, you see a little adjustment to some of this, but really not very much. It is very similar to what we went through in 2016. So, just my little take on this, and I know as I get older, I completely admit that I am far more centrist in my political points of views. But whatever I believe, I don't want everyone to have to think the same way that I do. And that's what makes it America, and why we are a melting pot. And maybe just people can let go a little bit of that meanness and wanting everyone to think the same way and demonizing the other side. All right, like, subscribe. You can hit the alert buttons if you want to know when I'm doing a new video. And till next time, stay closer to the heart, and happy fall. Cheers.